my personal journey and exploring the way that I've approached my MS diagnosis. I'll also look at how the diagnosis has affected my life in several areas, including employment and family relationships, and also the changes that I've had to make to my life as well. After that, I'll explore the journey of a patient advocate. Why should you get involved? How can you get involved? And what patient advocacy can lead to. Now, we all know that everyone with MS is different. And this session isn't about me saying what you should be doing or how you should be handling things. What I hope, though, is that you might be able to take a little inspiration from my story in order to lead a positive life with your own MS. It clearly shows the way that MS affects not just the person who has it, but everyone around you. Support for me has been so important when it comes to becoming empowered. Now, as you've heard, I was diagnosed with relapsing multiple sclerosis in 2008, so 10 years ago. I was aged 28 at the time. My initial symptoms included losing the strength in both my hands, losing the feeling down one side of my body, burning and pins and needles, and also fatigue. Following my diagnosis, I also experienced the MS hug and bladder and bowel issues. Now, the first step that I took to becoming empowered was to become informed and to get the best care possible. I looked for information in all sorts of places, and as a result, I found out that I could be referred to an MS specialist rather than seeing a general neurologist. So 3 years after I was diagnosed by a general neurologist, I switched my care to an MS specialist team. So now, even though I have to do an 80-mile round trip to see my MS specialist team, it was really my MS specialist neurologist that put me on the path to becoming an expert patient. And he was really the one who encouraged me to have the confidence to interact with the different groups who are involved in my MS journey. So that includes charities and patient associations, researchers, pharmaceutical companies, and also obviously healthcare professionals. Now, in my family, there are actually 3 of us who have multiple sclerosis. My first cousin, my mum's brother's son, was diagnosed with MS the year before me in 2007. I also have an identical twin sister who looks exactly like me, and she was diagnosed with MS in 2011. My younger sister, Anisha, developed another autoimmune condition, ulcerative colitis, which is an inflammatory bowel disease, the same year that I was diagnosed with MS in 2008. So basically, the last 10 years for our family has been pretty difficult. Now, when I was diagnosed at my local hospital, as I said, by a general neurologist, I was given this life-changing diagnosis, and then I was just sent away. There was no information offered, no signposting in terms of where to go for reliable support and services, and there was no guidance as to what, as a family, we should be doing next. We felt completely alone. As a family, we've learned a lot in the past 10 years, and eventually we came to realize that there was information and support out there, but there were barriers to accessing it and also understanding it, which I'll be speaking a little bit about later. But now I want to talk about how MS has impacted my life and also those around me, because I don't live with my MS alone. There have been numerous challenges and changes to various aspects of my life. Firstly, my job. Now, I'm a Spanish to English translator and analyst for a business intelligence firm, and I've been working for them now for 14.5 years. I'd already been working for them for 4 years when I received my diagnosis. Now, at the time of my diagnosis, I was waking up at 4:45 in the morning in order to get into the office for 6:30. Now, that became increasingly unmanageable, and I started to work from home a couple of days a week, eventually going full-time from home around 7 years ago. My employer has also brought in flexible working hours to help manage my fatigue, and they also give me time off for all my medical appointments. They've been very open and understanding about my MS, which is one of the reasons why I've stayed at the company and also in full-time employment for so long. When you have a good relationship with your employers, it makes you reluctant to go elsewhere. As a result, my career hasn't progressed the way that I thought it would, and to an extent, MS has limited things. Now, in terms of the change in family relationships, my parents in particular have taken on the carer's role. Now, the term carer is usually associated with someone who washes you, clothes you, bathes you, feeds you, and helps you to physically move about. However, as many of you probably know, that with MS, the term carer can actually mean many more things. So it can mean things like driving me somewhere, doing my shopping for me, helping me with household tasks like cleaning, for example. I'll be honest, this isn't what I thought my life would be like at the age of 39. My dad and mum are 69 and 70 now. I thought it would be the other way around, that I would be looking after them. They've also ended up working longer than they thought they would, because they're worried about the financial position that I will be in if I have to give up work because of my MS, and also because they know that financially I have suffered because of the limited career progression. Now, whenever something major happens in your life, it's often said that that's when you find out who your true friends are. I'm definitely not alone in discovering that following a diagnosis with MS, your friend circle becomes much smaller. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but the number of people who I can truly rely on are few and far between. So it does mean that things like social media have become increasingly important to me in order to avoid isolation, and also to be able to talk to people who understand what I'm going through. Now, as you can see, it's quite obvious, I'm Asian. In the Asian community, chronic illness and disability isn't talked about. There's a great deal of stigma and prejudice attached to not being perfect, especially if you're a woman. I've had Asian people tell me that the MS is my own fault, that God is punishing me for having done something bad in this or a former life, or that maybe my family has done something bad in this or a former life. In the Asian community, people believe that something like MS will harm your marriage prospects, and also the marriage prospects of your brothers and sisters. There's a lack of understanding about what multiple sclerosis is. Many people in the Asian community haven't even heard of MS. Sometimes they think it's contagious or it's hereditary. There They're worried that it will affect your ability to have children, to bring up children, to run a household, to have a job. As a result, many people in the Asian community actually hide their MS, although I obviously haven't, but that has meant that I've had to deal with some very negative attitudes. I've also had to adapt the active side of my life. Now, I've always been very sporty, and field hockey has always been a big part of my life. When I was a teenager, I was playing 7 days a week, and my whole family plays hockey. Now, even though hockey is no longer something that I'm able to do because of my fatigue, it was affecting my performance, and I felt like I was letting the team down. I found something else that I love to do just as much. Now, I believe that being adaptable and having an open mind to new ways of doing things is key to being able to live positively with MS. So, I took up dance and Zumba. Now, dance is one of the very few forms of exercise that you can do whatever your physical abilities. There's no right or wrong, and it's a fun way of being able to exercise in a way that suits your own individual needs. And also, you don't have a team relying on you either. Now, my younger sister, the one who has ulcerative colitis, she's a licensed Zumba instructor. And one of her classes is fully inclusive. Now, what do I mean by fully inclusive? I mean this. So, in the class, we have people who are completely healthy. We have people like me with long-term conditions. One person is paralyzed from the chest down. We have somebody else who is an amputee and only has one leg. We have someone with a spinal cord injury, someone with a visual impairment, and we also have somebody with cerebral palsy, amongst other things. The oldest person in my sister's class is in her mid-70s. The youngest is about 14. Now, if you don't believe that dance is for everyone, then watch this next video. The video is of some of the people in Anisha's class. Now, we were being filmed for a film to show how dancing has helped me to cope with my MS diagnosis. One of the first things that people say to me is, "I'm so sorry." And I say to them, you know what, don't be, because so many positive things have come out of my life with MS that I refuse to see it as a negative. But how has that happened? Well, one of the main ways has been the advocacy work that I've become involved in. I got involved in advocacy and patient engagement, initially for MS and later on for chronic illness and disability in general, for two main reasons. Firstly, I wanted to improve the support and the services out there and ensure that people who needed them knew that they were there and that they could access them. Secondly, I wanted to educate the wider community about what it's like to live with MS, what it's like to live with chronic illness, so that they know what's involved. Now, I truly believe that unless someone fully understands what you're going through, they're not going to be able to offer the right kind of support. As my advocacy work progressed, I also branched into patient engagement and why it's important to get the patient voice heard. It's about having the patient voice heard louder, stronger, and more effectively within the entire healthcare journey. And I want to make sure that patients are being valued for their experience, their time, and their expertise. So what is it specifically that I do? Well, firstly, I interact with all stakeholder groups, as you can see up on the screen. Now, stakeholder groups include charities and patient associations, industry, for example, pharmaceutical companies, healthcare professionals, so doctors and nurses, and also individuals who live with MS and chronic illness. Within each segment, I also work with lots of different organisations, not just in the UK, but also all over Europe and also the USA. I also have different roles. So within the charity sector, for instance, I have a number of official roles, which you can see up on the screen, but I also have lots of other more unofficial ones. So that was an example of one of the things that I do. I produce videos for social media where I talk about my own experiences and encourage others to share theirs. It's really an open diary about the issues that have affected me since my diagnosis, in the hope that in being open, it might help others to ask for the support that they need, or they might be able to learn from others who are going through a similar thing. I also blog, I write articles for various online and printed publications. I'm a regular contributor in the media on issues relating to health and chronic illness, so I go on the radio and also on the television. I advise on interacting with Asian communities when it comes to healthcare. I speak at events and conferences, and I also offer consultancy on patient engagement. And as if that wasn't enough, I also review content, literature and research and clinical trial documents for relevance and ease of understanding. And I sit on study and ethics committees and advisory panels. Now you have to remember here, I'm doing all of this on top of a full-time job. But I think that really shows how passionate I am about seeing change happen. Now, advocacy has literally changed my life. I've learned new skills, things that I would never have had the chance to learn through my personal or professional life. I've met people who inspire me and who are showing me what's possible. I've also made new friends and extended that all-important support network. Plus, I've gained a huge amount of confidence. Now, believe it or not, I was really shy growing up, and the thought of speaking in public would really, really scare me. But when you have a passion and something that you feel needs to be said, it makes you step out of your comfort zone, and you do things that you would never have thought was possible. Now, my largest live audience at a single event so far has been more than 700 people. 10 years ago, before my diagnosis, I'd have never had the courage to do something like that. I also feel that I'm making a difference in the world and to the lives of people who are affected by chronic illness. Now, up on the screen is just one message that I've received over social media. So somebody messaged me over Facebook, and she said, "I've just watched your video about staying positive, and I hope to follow your example, as I've been recently diagnosed and I've been struggling. But I will try and have a more positive outlook from now on." Now, it's an amazing feeling when you receive a message from someone to say that what you're doing is helping them in some small way. My advocacy work has also led me to experiencing some amazing things. Now, I've been to 10 Downing Street twice. The first time I was asked to go and speak about the future of volunteering and engagement within the MS community. And the second time I was asked to attend a reception that was to celebrate the advances in MS research and also the contribution made by volunteers to the MS community. Now, that second reception that I was asked to go to was actually hosted by the Prime Minister, Theresa May, which was pretty amazing. I've also travelled extensively with my advocacy work, so some of the countries that I've been to include Poland, France, Germany, the Czech Republic, the Netherlands, Northern Ireland, Spain, Switzerland, Portugal, and now Romania. I've also had the chance to share my work widely as a result of some of the awards that I've received because of my advocacy work. Now, a couple of months ago, I was named Woman of the Year at the 18th Annual Asian Achievers Awards. Now, there were around 800 people who attended that ceremony, and the big win for me wasn't actually getting the award itself. For me, the most important thing was that every single person in that room that night, so over 800 people, they went away knowing a little more about MS, a little more about living with chronic illness. In August this year, I also received a Points of Light award from the Prime Minister, which resulted in me being asked for radio and press interviews. Again, giving me a brilliant platform to be able to raise more awareness about MS. And I can quite honestly say that I'm so incredibly happy with my life. MS has driven me into becoming the person that I've always wanted to be. I love what I do. I love the people that surround me. I love the people who I meet on this journey. And I also love the fact that I've been able to make a mark on the world in some small way. But probably one of the most incredible things that has come out of my diagnosis was in 2015, when I appeared on national television on the BBC in front of millions of viewers in a special 4-part series of Strictly Come Dancing, or Dancing with the Stars, as it's also known. Now, I was one of just 6 people chosen out of over 11,000 nominations, and I was chosen specifically because of my advocacy work and what I've done to help others with MS and chronic illness. And this is the moment that I found out. It's a dream come true for me. It was the biggest platform that we've ever had in the UK to raise awareness about MS and particularly the hidden symptoms of the condition. It was the hardest thing that I've ever done in my life, physically, emotionally, and also mentally. But it was also one of the best experiences that I have ever had. I'm a big fan of the show, and it was amazing to be given the chance to challenge myself and also challenge the public perceptions of living with chronic illness. Afterwards, people were coming up to me in the street to talk to me about MS. People were contacting me on social media to ask more about MS. People were stopping my parents in the supermarket to find out how the family was coping. But 2 of the most important things for me was that firstly, it inspired lots of people to become more physically active. So I'm going to end with that in mind. I'm going to show you that the whole idea of making the impossible possible can actually be a reality. And that goes for any aspect of your life, whether that's your personal life, your social life, your professional life, and your life with MS. If you become empowered, it can lead to wonderful things, and it can really help when it comes to viewing life with MS in a positive way. So, I'm going to play you one more video. In this video, it just goes to show that even when you're diagnosed with something like MS, even when you think things might not be possible, Dreams can still come true.